Welcome to Turning Point. I'm Becky Alfrey.
And I'm Panda. Throughout our lives, we experience gain and loss, success and failure. All of these experiences are necessary to evolve.
However, sometimes the most unexpected disappointments help us discover our true life purpose.
When Josie Ramirez-Herndon noticed signs of familiar patterns emerging in her son's behavior, she knew he was in trouble. A diligent search for the appropriate program that would get him back on track and literally save his life was nowhere to be found. Because of this experience, a natural transition took place. With her husband, Jim Herndon, and later, Addiction Therapeutic Services was born.
Well, I've been working in healthcare, behavioral health, specifically addiction treatment, since 1987 throughout. And with over 25 years experience, it's been a natural evolution to have my own treatment center. And the story behind that truly is a heartfelt story, as you mentioned.
Yes.
It's personal. I have a son that struggles with addiction. And through his addiction, dual diagnosis. The drugs that he used affected his psychiatric ability, in a sense.
Sure.
And it's always hard to, as a parent or as a therapist, to know what came first, the psychiatric or the drugs. Either way, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So we've known that he struggles with addiction and a dual diagnosis. He was in college in Boulder, Colorado, in recovery after going to an inpatient treatment center near his community. I knew that he was struggling after almost 2 years of doing well. I could tell by the behaviors as a mother. I knew he wasn't calling as much, or he wasn't going to his meetings anymore. So I said, would you like for me to find you an outpatient, an intensive outpatient?
So you can stay on
so that you
school.
can stay on track because you're struggling. And he said yes. And he admitted that he was struggling. And so I looked for a program there in town, and there wasn't one.
Interesting.
And I called facilities that were there nearby and asked, could he join your alumni group? Could he join some of your program? Because
and here, this was your business, so you were connected.
And I knew these people.
Right.
And that, no, he has to be alumni to come to our groups.
Oh, my.
And so I went back to having boundaries, telling him to go to meetings. Ultimately, and everything is God's will, I'll tell you the end of the story, but ultimately, there were no resources and he did relapse. We almost lost him. And previously, his drugs of choice had been marijuana, alcohol, methamphetamine. But while on the phone with him, knowing that he was struggling and he was in relapse due to his behavior, we asked him, have you been using drugs again? And he said yes. And my husband asked him, have you, used heroin? And he said yes.
Oh, you were just devastated.
I didn't want to believe it because I've been working with these young heroin addicts and I've watched them die as working in residential programs and everything that we do, and it scared me.
Oh,
at that moment,
I can't even imagine the feeling. I would be just like you.
Oh, it was quite a moment, and I ultimately I called a friend of mine who's an interventionist. And my husband said, well, I think we should do this. And I said, wait, we're going to talk about what we should do later, but I'm calling Gail and we're going to go do an intervention and I'm going to go get him.
Right.
Because he's using IV heroin and that's not okay.
He could die.
He could die anytime. So we did an intervention. I got an airline ticket for my friend and I. The next day we flew out and truthfully, it was difficult. We went to an apartment that I don't think any parent should ever
have to
see what goes on in these apartments with, But he saw us when we were there, and he knows Gail has been his friend and friend of the family, and it's like he was waiting. And a lot of times they are waiting for that intervention. He didn't resist. He said, "Okay, let's go."
But you had to be brave enough to notice there was something wrong and to do something about it. And parents need to do that.
Absolutely.
We want to believe the best, and we want to make excuses, and that's nothing but denial.
Right.
And you can lose someone if you play that card. Yeah.
It's a difficult. You do hold your line, and you have to have your boundary and go to Al-Anon, and that I've been going to for over 24 years. However, I think as a parent, as a family member and loved one, you intuitively know when it's time.
Right.
When just like the addict knows when they say that they're dying from this disease, I truly believe them because they are. Mm-hmm. I think a family member also knows when it's that
when you're
critical.
Close to someone, you know when they're in trouble. Absolutely.
And so he was ready, and ultimately he went to treatment and. He met his now wife, and
that is a wonderful story.
Grandbabies, and that was probably almost 5 years ago.
It's a wonderful ending.
Yeah.
And he's in recovery right now.
As far as I know, he is.
Right.
Again, I don't keep track of his recovery anymore, but because as a parent, that's the boundary. Again, but I do believe he's doing very well, and I assume he's in recovery because he's not drinking it, and he has a job and his wife and his children, and he's doing the best he's ever.
That's so wonderful.
But you
knew there was something missing. So your husband also in the same business.
Yes.
And with facilities that were working on addiction therapy.
Yes.
He also is a recovering addict.
Yes.
And you two came together and said there is a need that you want to fill.
Exactly. Yes, my husband practices addiction medicine, and he detoxes clients medically.
So you two work on different areas.
Yes.
But together you have brought a facility that takes care of everyone that needs the help.
That's right. Well, there's many people that want the help.
That want it. They have to want it. They have to make that call. The family has to make an intervention. And you are able to do that kind of intervention.
Absolutely. I always tell the clients and the staff, as long as there's a little bit of motivation on their part, I'm not asking them to be excited because that usually doesn't happen until later.
No.
But if they're motivated enough to come in and walk in that day to go to group and to see their therapist, because it is one day at a time, but sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, because they are absolutely craving the alcohol and drugs, and that's a legitimate, denial. So we take it with them one day at a time. We're there with them through the journey as long as they're willing on some level to get help.
With all the success Dennis DeGroot had throughout his personal and professional life, it was not without huge surprises and major disappointments. However, those turning points made him, created him, and indeed were the catalyst to discover his much-needed courage in our society.
I got married like all men and women are supposed to do. And, and I married a woman that I dated right after high school. We both were in college, and we did our own thing, and then we broke up, and then we got back together again. And then
which is pretty normal. That's what we do a lot, dating.
Yeah.
So you were having a normal, in love, you fell in love with her, you told me.
Yes, I did fall in love with her, and still love her to this day. And as a human being, not obviously in the same way. But we married, and we were probably together off and on, as well as being married 8 to 10 years, I forget now. But when we had I think we had a good marriage when we were married.
Did you have children?
No, she wasn't. We weren't able to have them. I don't know whose.
Right. It doesn't matter.
We had planned to adopt.
You were going to. That was in.
Well, we had gone through all the process, and the baby came after she left me.
And so let's talk about that, because everybody always thinks, oh, nobody would understand this, or it only happens to me. We always think that when we're doing something. Well, quite frankly, that's not true. In fact, there are people that experience. So what? Tell the audience your experience.
We're married, of course. And we, of course, at least in my culture and so on, and my family, you're supposed to, when you get married, you buy a house.
Right.
You have kids and buy a house. So we planned for adoption. The baby came after we separated, but.
Interesting.
That of course, in those days, in 1970, you couldn't. A single parent could not keep the child.
Okay.
And
wow, in 1970.
Right. And
So did the adoption go away?
Well, yeah, because I said, well, the baby came, and they called me, and I answered the phone, and they said, well, I can't remember what sex it was, but your baby's come. And I said, well, it's nice, but I don't have a wife now.
Wow.
Well, sorry, you can't keep the kid, of course.
Interesting.
So, anyways, but we bought a house, and we were doing that, and then one night for supper, my ex-wife and I were sitting together having supper, and we're both 29 years old, 29 years old, 28 years old, I guess.
Okay.
And she said, I don't love you anymore.
Was this a total shock to you?
Well, yes.
Okay. Wow.
I had to, when she walked out the door, that was the end of it. There wasn't any reconciliation.
Did she walk out that night?
Yes.
Oh my, that would be very hard on you, huge hard.
Yeah, it was.
So she said, I don't love you anymore. Anything else?
Well, no, she just packed up and she walked out. Well, what I found out was, of course, that I was never a jealous person. I felt very secure in my relationship, and she always had male or female friends, and and I had male friends, and
It's all normal.
it's all normal.
Yeah.
So I never saw any signs, or was I ever looking for any, and basically she was having an affair with a young woman at the hospital where she worked.
When did you find that out?
Well, I don't know how it all came out. It's so long ago now, but it came out. I knew of the individual. She used to be over at the house. She was a younger woman.
Okay.
And I just found out about it. And
So somebody told you? Is
well,
that
no,
possible?
I just remember it.
Okay.
Literally, I never went through my wife's drawers, but when she left a lot of her clothes and everything until she immediately came later when she came to pick them up, and my mother and I were going through her drawers and so on, and we came across some letters from her girlfriend to her.
That's what you were supposed to find.
Really? Well, that was devastating.
Of course.
That was devastating.
But at least you knew what was going on.
Right.
That in anything that seems tragic, that there's something good that comes of it. So here, this
agree
was
now.
a tragedy that you were experiencing. Well, we have to look back to understand our lives.
Right.
So you felt, you said you were devastated.
I was.
That she told you. You were depressed, devastated.
Yeah, cried a
And-
lot of tears over
And
that one.
now you see that allowed you to let Dennis come out.
And then I just decided one day that I wanted to experience a man.
Okay.
Been in my life, in my thoughts since I was 3-4 years old.
Okay.
And so I went out to a bar and met someone, and bells went off. And I thought, oh my God, I've been doing the wrong thing.
So it was a completely different, this was something you had buried inside you
Yes.
and not let out.
Right.
And then you allowed your feelings.
Yeah. And
Literally.
so I guess women, it's been so long since I've dated a woman, but if I remember correctly,
Yes.
women used headaches for getting out of situations.
Yes, that still works.
Well, I started doing it too. I'd go on and I'd have to have beards for we used to, women to go out with after I did this. 'Cause I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'm only going to do it once. Well, Pandora's out of the box now. And I knew that it was really what I should be doing. But I did.
It felt different. You had the connection. Your heart was in a different place.
Yeah, and I never felt like that before in my life. Freedom.
Think about so many people that never let their real self come to the surface because they're too scared of it.
Yeah.
But don't we all know people like that?
Oh, I know some to this day.
Well, that's why we're doing the show.
Oh, well, anyways, I did this for about a year and a half.
And it wasn't an experiment any longer. It was
Well, I was
knowledge.
doing both.
Okay, all right.
And I realized that after...
You were dating both men and women?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would date the women, and I would have a headache. And
With the women?
With the women.
And they were gone when you were with a man?
And then I'd go home and the man would be waiting for me.
Oh, my goodness, that's hysterical.
Well, it was complicated. I knew that I had to stop this. I had to make a decision in my life.
And
I had to
you
go
won
one way or the other.
That's right.
I can't do that. I can't be unfair to a woman. We women we're single. They want a husband. They want a family. They
Right.
want children, and I'm not the guy.
And you decided that was not the life you wanted.
No, and I didn't want to be unfair to somebody else. I didn't want to be unfair to a woman and give them hopes and take them down a lane and then have them back out and so on, because they have their hopes
You're
and
being
gains.
respectful.
Yes, exactly. So I told my parents, and my mother, of course, cried, even though she knew as mothers know their children.
Right. But she cried. Because
of course she cried.
We want our kids to be accepted and loved. And
Exactly.
she was just worried that you would be ridiculed.
Exactly.
She was just being loving.
Exactly.
Like you said she was.
Yep, and it's exactly what basically was her words, what you just got through saying. And but she accepted it, and my father, as I say, he was a quiet man, but he accepted it as well. And I went on with my life.
The amazing truth about Dorothy Dale Kloss's life is that she's still peaking. Seriously, her graceful style and positive energy, which is easily felt if you're in the same room, is probably the secret gift to the many years of her great success as a professional entertainer.
Everybody needs a beginning, and it's nice to be part of that giving sometimes, because it certainly has come back to us.
Oh, yes.
I mean, in many ways. I mean, I think that everybody thought when I left the Palm Springs Follies, and I never talked much about my career, and a lot of people don't relate to me, which is kind of sad, in the 40s. But I was a star I played when Sinatra, good old Blue Eyes, when he was at the Paramount and all the girls were screaming.
Right.
I was at the Strand Theater with Eddie Duchin. I had just come back from South America. I was there a year at the Copacabana Palace in Rio.
Gosh.
Wow.
And that's a famous club. It still exists probably.
Oh, I don't know. Well, yes,
I
the
bet,
hotel.
the Copacabana?
Well, it's the Copacabana Palace is the hotel.
Right.
And then they had the big showroom, But, I mean, those were glorious days. And then we came back, and then we went to Mexico City, and I worked with Cantinflas there for about 8 months.
And who was that?
He was a famous comedian who did Around the World in 80 Days. And so I was very lucky in that respect. But everything, hinges on Palm Springs Follies, Palm Springs Follies.
Oh, that was just at the end of, that was totally after your career.
Well,
actually.
I went into it when I was 71.
Right. It was just giving you something to do, pass the time. In a way, I mean, it was not your main gig.
No, it wasn't.
No,
That's
knew
what
that.
I'm saying.
I knew that, yeah.
But I think, and I tell that in the book, but I think what's so amazing is like Riff, he used to, when, I sent him a tape when my son was getting transferred, he and his family, to Philadelphia. And I went, I'm in LA, and what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I was teaching. And the girls that I was teaching had seen this show and said, you should be in that show, Dorothy. Oh, I said, Then when Craig said to me, Mom, I'm being transferred, and I went, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm tired of teaching. I love teaching, but you can have too much of it, you know?
Now, you're saying teaching tap.
Teaching tap.
Right.
And ballet I did, too. But anyhow, and I was trained in both of them. And so I thought, he was leaving in January 1st. When he and his family left, and I went, oh. I thought, this is what I mean about young people focusing and not, just don't let rejection,
get in your way.
Get in your way.
It's not a big deal.
Because
Right.
I went, aha. That was in the back of my mind when these students had said, you should be in that show. It's everybody over 55 years old. That was the magic word. Over 55, and I was way over 55. But anyhow, and so I sent Mr. Markowitz a tape. And I did it in the studio. and very corny. And I thought, why not? I had a bunch of adult ladies that could dance like son of a guns. I had them like 4 or 5 years. And I thought, this will be fun. And I was in front of them, and and they wanted to do it. And I sent them this tape, and then I sent them a single tape. And the next day I got a call, and he said, you know, I'd really like you in the show. And he said, but I want you to come to the audition in L.A. And he said, let's talk. And I said, fine. And so Madeline Clark's dancing school in L.A. And oh my God, there were 200 people a day auditioning for this show. So the choreographer was there, and they're just all fighting for the front line. And I'm like, oh, why? If
They're
you
fighting
got it,
for the front line.
They're fighting for the front line, and I went.
Yeah.
So I went in the back and leaned against the bar, you know, the ballet bar back there, and it started. And the choreographer, Gene, was sitting in front, and he had a bad foot, and he was trying to explain what he wanted. And all of a sudden he said, the blonde, you in the back. And I went, well, there was a wall behind me.
Okay, but it was you. You were in the back.
And he said, you know, come on, come here. And I went, you. And I walked up. But he had my resume, you see.
He knew that you would be able to
see.
take direction and
So
show everybody.
He said, would you do me a favor? You look like you know what you're doing. He said, would you do it for me? He said, I'll tell you some of the things, and then you take over. And I went, okay. So we did. And at the end, Mr. Markowitz called me over, and he had my resume, and he said, so Dorothy, it says here you're 70. Is that
I know
true?
you didn't look 70, because you don't look your age right now. So you probably look 48 at 70.
I wish I was 70 again. And I said, yeah, that's true. And he had a good sense of humor. And he said, when will you be 71? And I said, in October. I says, I never heard of anybody getting hired because they're older. You know. And he said, so let me ask you, are you married? And I said, no. And he said, would you like to be? And I said, we'll talk. And that was the end of our conversation. He said, I'll call you tomorrow. And that was the audition. And I got the job. And then I was there for 15 years.
The romantic and talented Ken Prescott, co-host of Two for the Show, tells how he met his co-host, dance partner, and mate for the very first time.
Dorothy and I met, it was my first year at the Follies. She had been there several years, and we immediately were attracted to each other because we both love tap dancing and we both love to laugh. And there weren't big laughers there. You know, in fact, there was dressing room here and dressing room there, and we'd meet in the center. I said, come to my office. We meet in the center, and we'd laugh, you know. And it just frosted them because they couldn't figure out, you know, people, when you're happy, there's two things people can't figure out. Why you are, and they're annoyed that you are. You know what I mean?
Well, they're jealous.
Yeah.
Which should not be the case.
Shouldn't be. So we just had a great instant relationship, and it's just continued on to this very day.
That's an awesome thing to say.
I mean, you know, and I think that's we have a great act called Two for the Show, which we do tap numbers. I sing a lot. We have media that goes along with it, which is great. We do ballroom numbers, and I lift Dorothy and stuff. And we just got our radio show, Two for the Show, and it's on.
That's the name of the show.
It's the name of the show,
Two for the
and it's
Show.
on. It's being produced by a fellow in Long Island, Eric Koppelman, a great guy, and we do it here live in Palm Springs, and then it's archived. It's on. Can I give him the plug?
Of course.
It's on www.wliny.com. Now listen, you guys, when you go on the computer and you go you click on the link, and then you click on our picture. And what will come up, if you're listening to it live, it's live at 11 a.m. Palm Springs time, 2 p.m. Eastern, or just click on the archived interviews. We've had, so far, we've had Donnie Most from Happy Days. Susie,
Oh, how fun.
Oh, he was great. We had Susie Cadam from original Dean Martin Gold Digger. We had Gigi Perot, who was a big actress in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We had Kathy Lennon of the Lennon Sisters this week. Next week, we're having Henry Krieger, who wrote Dreamgirls. We're having Bill Jones from Glee.
You
Frank
have
Stallone.
all of these top people.
Great people.
And that's because of your backgrounds.
Yes, I knew most of these
The
people.
connections.
Also, I think it celebrates the golden age of entertainment. And we're not necessarily meaning you have to be 100 to be on the show.
No.
But they exude the golden age of entertainment. And I think people are missing real entertainment. And the show is
absolutely,
we're
I
not,
agree.
we don't just talk. There's a musical opening. We have some jokes.
Really?
We do the commercials because we're sponsored locally by 3 sponsors.
Fabulous.
We
Good for
play
you.
songs. Then we interview the guest. Dorothy has great stories. I may play a couple songs I've recorded. We have a musical ending. So it's a show. It's a variety show on radio.
Both of you are so creative, so talented, and the reason why you are, I believe, is because you keep doing it. You stay youthful you're still creative. You're still writing.
I've written 7 musicals, and Dorothy does write her parts of the script. We collaborate together. I just co-authored parts of a new musical about Glenn Miller that's very close to being funded, and it's going to go on the road.
It's so exciting.
So it is exciting.
Oh my God!
Oh my God! No, it's great fun. But we do write this. I want to make it clear that it's a real script for the radio show. It's not just, hey, how you doing? We've had a lot of great compliments, and a lot of them. And one girl said, "It sounds like you've been doing this all your life," which is wonderful. Now we have, but not in that particular arena.
Right. We want to enjoy life.
Yes, of course.
And bring joy to our life.
And Dorothy is so funny, and she has all these wonderful stories. And now that we've gotten into like the 4th segment, we can ad lib with each other, And
oh yeah, you two would be amazing. I can't wait to listen.
Fun.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. If you have a turning point you'd like to share, please call the number at the bottom of the screen. Through life's ups and downs, it's easy to get lost and stuck in negative thought patterns, which can sometimes make us feel like we're failing.
What we can do is pause, choose our thoughts, and realize we can be kinder to ourselves and always choose positive. It literally will change your life.
Have a wonderful week.
And thank you for watching.